You can pick the one, and we'll make sure the little red lights are on. Our cameraman will make sure. You pick the one you're comfortable with. So let me read a little bit about you, honey. Tonight's singer will be Emma Leo. Emma is a 4th grade student at Cardinal Newman School. She enjoys time with her family, who are here with her today, her mom, dad, and her brother. She enjoys time with her family doing gymnastics, singing, and she likes to dance as well. Emma has won several awards for singing at different competitions throughout the region. During last year, she was a cast member in Mary Poppins, Grease, and most recently, completed Shrek the Musical. So Emma, we're looking forward to hearing you sing "O Canada." So whenever you're ready.
Oh Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons' command, carton brasse porte le paye, il se porte la croix, dans l'histoire une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, Emma, well done. We're very proud of you. I'm sure you're relieved to have it over with, and I think you did a terrific job. Well done. Thank you. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for someone to do something like that. Great job, honey. First order of business is the adoption of the minutes from our February 14th meeting on Valentine's Day. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Crater. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Councillor Iannone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't here that evening, so I'd like to vote as opposed to the budget. I was opposed to the foreign investors paid business motion that you passed. I was opposed to the ranked ballot. Yeah, I wasn't here, so I wanted them on record. And I had emailed Councillor Thompson a question today, and I just wanted to know what, in regards to asking staff to investigate an in-camera item. I'm confused. What does that mean? What is, like, how would that happen? Were any particulars put forward?
There were no particulars put forward. No, there was a motion.
So what is exactly, I don't understand that.
Maybe we can ask staff. I don't know if we can, do we have any kind of a report or any kind of feedback we can give Councillor Iannone?
Well, Mr. Mayor, my understanding of the motion was that there is an allegation that in-camera discussion was shared outside of in-camera session. So my understanding, that's what the council wants us to investigate.
So you'll be contacting each of us separately?
Well, we have to report back. We haven't, I can tell you this, Mr. Mayor, maybe I should just bring it up now. We've contacted the Ombudsman's office, and we wanted to have the Ombudsman's office help us in the investigation. That was our hope, because it would be basically at the Ombudsman's cost. The Ombudsman has indicated to me just yesterday, and I've asked for the office to confirm it in writing, that they would defer that matter to a integrity commissioner. They said their office does not participate in those kind of investigations. Their office would participate in any review of any of the findings, but that the pending legislation, the amendments to the Municipal Act, are requiring that all municipalities have an integrity commissioner. That currently is before second reading of the House. But the Ombudsman's office is taking the lead on that, saying it's the intention of the province that for code of conduct investigations like this of members of council and breach of confidentiality are matters that they believe should be held and investigated by an integrity commissioner. So that's where we stand today. I'm not sure if council wants to give staff any further direction, but Mr. Mayor, that's the most recent update that we have with respect to that.
Thank you. I just want to know.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, just to follow that up, the information was given to me as I think it was given to most people of some concern about this, and that's why the motion was made, and it went to the integrity, or to the ombudsman, who said they don't deal with it. So I would make the motion that we proceed with an integrity commissioner.
Okay.
Motion to that effect?
Yep. Councillor Carrier, second. Do we have any discussion? Councillor Crater.
I just want, how much is this going to cost if we do this?
Mr. Beeman, do you have any?
Cheaper than the 50.
We'll proceed on the basis of hiring the person on a fixed fee. So that I don't want to actually tell them what the fixed fee is on an open, because that'll compromise our bargaining position. But nothing like the expense of the last inquiry. This one won't need to have anywhere near the amount of work as the one before did. So I certainly would not expect anything beyond about $7,500. And I'd really be trying hard to keep them under that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Any other discussion of council? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. So did we vote on the minutes? Yes, we already approved all the minutes then. Did we not? No. Okay, so approval of the minutes from our February 14th minutes. All in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Any disclosures of a pecuniary interest? Councillor Crater?
Thank you, Worship. Under municipal accounts is check number 401294, payable to myself for services.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morocco?
Yes, under check number 401376, payable to my spouse.
Okay, Councillor Carrier?
Thank you, Worship. Planning issue, PBD 2017-5. The city-initiated amendment. I live adjacent to that property, so I'm going to declare a conflict.
Okay, thank you. Any other disclosures? Councillor Pietrangelo? Check there, no? No, okay, maybe not. No. Okay, and for myself, checks 401879 and 401303. Checks made out to myself. Okay, moving on to our report, CAO 2017-02. Yeah, regarding the Niagara Regional Transit Delivery Service. Our CAO, Ken Todd, is going to take us through the report. And I'd also like to acknowledge, I know we've got Gary McNeil, the former head of Go Transit for 15 years, who's helping us out through the Dillon Group. So thank you for being here. Gary, probably one of the more foremost rail experts that we have. Lucky to have you helping us out. Mr. CAO, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The past two terms of council, in your strategic priorities, we've talked about improvements in transit, and council has been very proactive over the last couple of years of increasing our conventional transit services. One of the issues under our strategic priorities is intermunicipal transit and intermunicipal connections. And, you know, I was even surprised when I went back and the staff were putting together this presentation that we really commenced on this journey back in 2010, and that's within the last two mandates of this council. And there was a proposal back then to have the three large municipalities, St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland, cooperate with the region to have improvements in intermunicipal connections, and they did a pilot project, and that started off in September of 2011, and the pilot project was funded through the region in the regional budget, and that pilot project has been ongoing. We have then proceeded to formalize that and carry on routes. There's been changes to the routes over the last few years, but in 2015, as the region was getting near the end of that pilot project, they came together and the regional council threw it back to the local municipalities to say we really need to come up with a new model for the whole region. I would hope everybody in this room would agree that, we've started these intermunicipal connections, and the thought of us going back to not having connections between municipalities is something that would just not be the right thing for this region to do in terms of economic development, in terms of growth and getting people to jobs and students back and forth to both the university and the college. So they threw it back to us, and our council in June of 2015 passed a motion to support working with St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland, and the region to come up with how we best provide that inter-municipal model. So in January 16, there's a working group that's been meeting quite regularly throughout the whole past year, and that included all of the mayors from those specific municipalities and the regional chair, the CAOs, and that's formed a working group. In addition to that, we've had a technical group, which has included Mr. Dren and his counterparts at St. Catharines Transit and Welland Transit, along with some of the other transit delivery personnel throughout the region, including staff at the region. And what we engaged in is we engaged in an RFP process to hire Dillon Consulting. And Dillon was hired, and Mr. McNeil is part of that team. And we were very pleased with the quality of the team that we had put together to assist us through this program. So right from the get-go, the Dillon report had some guiding principles, and I just want to quickly go over those because it all started with the customer and had this thing customer-driven, because we've got a number of stakeholders out there, whether it be individuals from Port Colborne trying to get to St. Catharines for school, people from Fort Erie trying to get to work in Niagara Falls, Niagara College students, Brock students, people going from Niagara Falls to St. Catharines for work, and those are the customers that we need to pay attention to, and how do we provide this service to them. So through the process, there was quite a bit of consultation, public meetings held to try to get what the needs of the customer are. We wanted to look at some unconventional solutions. We didn't want to think that just traditional transit solutions were what we needed to look at, so we were trying to find a way to look at some leading-edge technologies. We definitely wanted this system to be integrated. We want it to be seamless. We want to be able to have a system where you could get on a bus in Port Colborne and seamlessly be able to ride all the way to, say, Niagara-on-the-Lake. And we have to do that through interconnections. We have to bring in the GO train service. We need to look at hubs. There's a corresponding hub study that's going on at the regional level right now to identify what those hubs would be and how do we get all of these connectors to, in reality, feed the GO and feed the hubs so we can get connectors throughout the region. It has to be economically responsible. Nowhere ever did we say that this was going to be a venture that was going to save the taxpayers money. It was customer driven, and it's in the end going to cost more money to provide a greater level of service, but it will provide that service throughout the entire region, which isn't there now. And it had to be fair. We had to be fair in terms of fairness to the taxpayer, fairness to the individuals that want to use it, and fairness to all of the other special interest groups and stakeholders in this process. So those were the key guiding principles that we set Dillon off on to make sure they paid attention to those throughout the process. Now, we continued on the whole year between February and December, and that was working, as I say, with a number of public meetings with the stakeholders. There was a number of public open houses. We went around, I personally, with some of the other CAOs, went around to visit every municipality in the region, visited all the CAOs and mayors, had discussion about what they believe their transit needs were in the region. That culminated in a draft report that was presented here to this council in the fall of 2016. And there was some feedback given to the group at that time. And that then resulted in January 17. The consultants were back here in early January to present an update to council, and that was referred to staff. So the report that you have tonight is a staff report. I can let council know that this very similar presentation has been before both St. Catharines Council and Welland Councils in the last 2 weeks. Both those councils have unanimously endorsed moving to the next steps, which I will get to. There were some additions, minor minor additions and a couple of recommendations in St. Catharines. But for the most part, the recommendations that both those municipalities have endorsed are the recommendations in the report that are before you tonight. So the Dillon report was broken down into two components. And the first component, and this is the component that Mr. McNeil was heavily engaged in, is the whole governance piece. And the second part is, I don't know, it's just some couple hundred-page report that, we're not going to get into the weeds of that today. That's really not what we're asking council to do, but what we're going to be asking for is that all those operational issues that whole report get referred off to two committees that we're going to be recommending be set up in the interim while we work through some other governance issues. So in the report tonight, recommendations 1, 2, and 3 of our report really deal with the governance issue, and recommendations 4 and 5 really deal with sending the Dillon report off to the operational group, which would include Mr. Dran and his counterparts, and a representative from each of the 12 municipalities to work at implementing what the recommendations were in the Dillon report. So I'll just touch briefly on the governance piece. And what the final report is suggesting is that the 3 municipalities, along with the Niagara region, come together and form a consolidated transit system, a system that can provide integration at the next level up across the region. Now, we don't really know what that's going to look like right now. That will be work that we're still to do, but it could be a municipal service board, it could be some kind of commission, but there would be some other structure or body that would be put in place that would oversee that coordination throughout the region in this consolidated model. And there's a couple of key things here I should mention to council. One is that this model indicates that control and continued control of local assets and local decision-making, if you will, with our conventional routes would continue to rest with this council. So we're not giving up on what we're doing currently in terms of our decision-making on the conventional routes. And the WeGo system is completely out of the equation. It's a completely different system. It's not part of this exercise. It will continue to be operated as it is in conjunction with the Niagara Parks Commission. So council needs to know and understand that right up front. The second part is that we are going to need a triple majority vote from across the region in order for this to proceed. And in that triple majority vote, we are going to be giving the region access on authority under the transit sphere, if you will, to participate formally at the table with respect to intermunicipal connections. So we would not be letting in the region into the transit business, if you will, to participate in local decision-making for conventional routes. Their participation at the table, and I called it in the report of the presentation, it's really a partial authority. And that authority would only be their participation in funding and assisting in the overall coordination, but looking at intermunicipal connections. So let me just follow that through with one jump ahead. If someday in the future we feel that we get the consolidated model operating, 10 years down the road, we say, look, this has really grown into what we would call a regionalized system, and we just want the region to take over the whole thing. Our view is that would take a second round of triple majority votes at that time to have this council and the other councils to sort of delegate their authority or give up their authority to the region. And we're not suggesting that now. We're simply suggesting a partial delegation of authority to allow them to participate at the table with us, where right now there's really no jurisdiction for them to be participating. So that's what the triple majority is. So there shouldn't be any fear around the council horseshoe here that we're giving up something. We're not. We're really going to be maintaining our control over our local issues, but under the recommendation, be participating in a higher level consolidated model that really is looking at coordination of fares, coordination of branding, coordination of scheduling, purchasing, things like that that can bring some true benefits to transit throughout the entire region. So if we move on, the operation, so that's the governance piece. The operational piece is really talking about a lot of issues, and this is where we don't want to get into this tonight. This is really for the technical people to get involved with, and you see that we're looking at, how do we extend services into evenings, operating on Sundays? How do we eliminate duplication of routes? How do we coordinate routes right now with our post-secondary students to get them better service throughout the summer months? Well, we can do that by coordinating routes and looking about integration. There's other links that we talk about out into the more rural area. We talk about dynamic transit systems. We're familiar with that, Council, because we do a couple of those. They're called Transcab, and we do that out in some of our rural areas. So these are the kind of strategies that we're looking at, and this is the detailed work that working group is going to be carrying out. And if Council endorses the recommendations, that's work that will continue on while we sort out the governance MOU, as I'll talk about in a few minutes. So the next steps, we need to get, if Council approves these recommendations tonight, requests will be going out to the region, as they already have gone out from St. Catharines and Welland, that we're asking them to pass a bylaw at the regional level to commence the triple majority process. And as I say here, the recommendations call for partial authority for transit as it relates to the municipal connections. We're not giving them carte blanche. It's just in that restricted scope. So they will come to the table and be a partner with us in St. Catharines and Welland in this process. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. The second thing is, if you approve this, you need to send myself off with other CAOs in the region to negotiate an MOU that would detail specifically what that consolidated model would look like. So that would be coming back to you. So we need to talk about things like assets, costs. So it's going to be control and cost. I would assume those are the two key things for this council. What's it going to cost us, and what's the control of that going to be? And those will be fleshed out in an MOU that will be brought back to this council at a later date. The third part is getting this big Dillon report, which has a lot of great stuff in it, and getting that referred off to the working group that they can start commencing their work on those route improvements and schedule improvements. Now, if there's anything in there that requires an expenditure of this council, we will be back to you and you will have a decision point at that point if you want. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we decide that we've picked a new type of fare box and we're going to go with that new type of fare box that totally integrates throughout the region. Well, we would have to be involved with buying those same fare boxes for our own local buses, and the region would be providing fare boxes for all of the intermunicipal buses, for example. So we would have a decision here at council to say we need an expenditure for those fare boxes. And that's a fairly simple example, but those are the kind of things that would come back to here. So on a conventional system, you would still have input. There would be recommendations coming from the consolidated group, that governance group above, to say we think this is the type of fare box you should buy because it integrates with everybody and it gives that seamless system. And then we would have the decision to say, yeah, we're in, we're gonna spend the money to upgrade our buses as well. So that's the concept of that. So just the next slide. So in the interim, so while we're working through the triple majority and while we're working through the MOU, which is probably going to take a few months to get resolved, this would be an interim model that we're talking about. So at the bottom, you've got the Dillon report. It's going to move up to the transit working group. Now, it's all of the transit managers and a representative from the other municipalities in the region, including somebody from the region itself. So that's really a staff team of technical people that are going to be looking at all of those responsibilities we're going to give them there. You know, development of fare boxes, technologies, policies, standard operating policies across the region. So everybody has the same standards for how their systems work. Any recommendations coming out of that group go up to the next level, which is the Transit Steering Committee. And that Transit Steering Committee will only be there in place while we work out the bigger governance piece, that MOU that we're talking about. So this might be, I'll just say this may be for the remainder of the year, it might be for the next 8 months, however long it takes us to get that MOU done. But this working group, or Transit Steering Committee, which is taking recommendations from the working group, would be comprised of 2 reps from Niagara Falls. Now currently on that are myself and the mayor, and in St. Catharines 2 reps, 2 from the City of Welland, and 4 from the Niagara region. But those 4 from the Niagara region would be a couple of regional reps, and 2 of those reps from the region would really be representatives from the smaller municipalities. It could be from Port Colborne, Wainfleet, Niagara-on-the-Lake, or whatever. And if it gravitates up again, if there's anything that this council needs to deal with in terms of financial expenditures or recommendations moving up through that system, it would come back to each of the councils for approval. So that's the interim model. And again, that would be in place for the next several months until we get the MOU on what this consolidated model would formally look like. So lots of controls for you still as we work through this. So that is pretty much the basis of the presentation. The recommendations, again, are the first 3 are dealing with the governance piece, and that's really accepting the idea in principle of a consolidated model. The second one is that you send me off and staff to negotiate an MOU that would deal with all those issues around what does this new consolidated model look like, and report back to you. The third one is that we would formally ask the region to commence the triple majority initiative to formally get them in the game. And quite frankly, if that triple majority isn't achieved, we'll be back here having another conversation with you, because we need to formally bring the region to the table, because they're a fairly significant funding partner in all of this. So that has to be completed. And then recommendation 4 is back on the slide. We're asking you to just support the formation of both the transit working group at the bottom, so they can continue the work that's been going on for the last 5 or 6 years on intermunicipal transit. And recommendation 7 talks about supporting the transit steering group, just so that they can continue to work through this process while we're working on the MOU. And it's noted there that group, the transit steering group, would be replaced or disappear once the formalization of that works, and that's under recommendation number 5. Okay.
Okay, thank
Happy
you.
to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
First of all, are there any questions before? Because we do have 2 speakers that are scheduled to speak. So I've got Councillor Thompson, Morocco, and Campbell for any questions first. We're going to hold the motion just till we get our speakers, and then we'll move, and I'll go to Councillor Thompson and Morocco in that order. So is there any questions of the CAO at this point, Councillor?
No questions, comments.
Okay, by all means. And then we'll bring up we've got 2 speakers in the delegation who want to speak. So I've got Councillor Thompson, Morocco, and Campbell.
Well, I think that this is a no-brainer. And when you mentioned back to 2011, I remember in 1980 going with Joe McMahon when he was the head of the transit here to meet with Mayor Stranges in Welland and the transit people to attempt to get some kind of transit system going between Niagara Falls and Welland and Port Colborne. Unfortunately, Mayor Stranges fell asleep at the meeting, and it didn't go very far. But we have been the leader in this municipality for many, many years. We were the first ones to have transit for the university and Niagara College. The WeGo system we worked on for 20 some odd years, and we have been the leader. This is so important for this municipality, more so than anybody else in the region. Being involved in tourism, I know that several of the larger hotels were sending buses every day all summer long up to Port Colborne and Welland, picking up 30 students to bring them down here just to have enough people to run their operations. So, and that is happening all over the region now. So for Niagara Falls, this is a no-brainer and extremely important to have a system in place that is going to work. because it's going to feed our economic development, which we're all about. So I'm very interested in supporting this, but I'm also very interested in the method in which we're moving ahead with the memorandum of understanding, because I never want to put us in the position where we don't have the ability as a council to make sure if we're not in favor of something in the future that we don't have an appeal process, we don't have something that we can do to offset whether it's going to be a financial or a representation or whatever it is. I think, and that's why I'm glad they split this up. Let's move ahead with it, study it, but the memorandum of understanding is particularly important. That is really going to be the key element that I'm interested in. The other part, we're the big winners in this situation because we need the people coming in here. That's why you have the industry in Niagara Falls attempting to get legislation through the federal government to, like the agricultural industry, to have foreign workers coming in here because they can't get enough people now to do the job in the summertime with the way things are moving with tourism. So very important. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. CAO?
If I could just comment, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the comments. And as we go forward, I would really appreciate feedback exactly like that as we move forward, because, you know, it's going to be what this council desires in terms of what's contained in that MOU. But it's very interesting because we've already got some experience with this because we operate the WeGo system. Now, it's a customer-driven focus with the WeGo system. But the back end of that system is operated by two different entities. And the visitors that come to Niagara Falls do not know that, or do they care? All they care is that I know that's my bus and I know it's going to get me there on time and I know what my fare is. But they don't realize that behind the scenes we have an operating agreement with the Parks Commission that lays out how we operate that system. And it's been working very nicely. We have a group that oversees that, Mr. Dren. They meet regularly. They work out differences. So we've got some experience in it. And I think if we can kind of keep those principles aligned with what we're doing here, I think we can be very successful at this. But, you know, most people don't really realize that that's happening. And I think if we can set that as a goal and keep the focus on being customer-driven and be worrying about the back end, and it would only be for the politicians, the bureaucrats, to how that's working. The customer doesn't care what really that model. They just want to make sure they're getting that service delivered like they've been promised to have it delivered. So we have a really good example, and I hope we can use that as a bit of a basis or a starting point for moving forward on this.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councilor Morocco, do you have any questions?
Your Worship, just as your representative that sits on the Transportation Steering Committee for the region, I spent half a day there this morning going over the new studies being brought forward. And this is actually, as Councillor Thompson said, it's a no-brainer, and we need to jump on this bandwagon here and move forward so that we can look at the future and start building a good transportation system for everybody and to actually really start moving people throughout the region and helping create more jobs and people to get jobs. So I fully support the recommendation coming forward, and I fully support the comments as well, and making sure that the MOU is supportive of our needs as well. So I have no problem supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could, through you to Mr. Todd, could you explain the triple majority process so that everybody's on the same page, please?
Sure. So first off, there have to be a majority vote at Regional Council. And if Regional Council approves it, it gets circulated to all 12 area municipalities. Then the majority of those 12 municipalities have to have voted in favor of it. And the third part of that is that those voting in favor has to represent a majority of the population of the region. I got that right in.
If I could just follow up on that. That being said, St. Catharines has already passed this. Welland has passed this, and I assume it's going to pass here tonight. Does that make up the majority of the population-wise in the region, to the best of your knowledge?
I think so.
It probably would. If not, it'd be pretty close, I would think. But it'd be pretty close. And quite frankly, if this thing is to succeed at all, those are the three you need to buy in anyway. So, but I got to tell you, I was one of the ones. I don't know how I got kind of anointed as being, one of the lead CAOs in this, but it's been a very interesting exercise for me. We went around to every municipality across the region and met with mayors and CAOs and staff, or whatever staff, transit staff or transportation staff they have. We were very surprised how much interest and buy-in there was of those smaller municipalities, even a municipality like Wainfleet, saying we need to get on board with this. We need to get connectivity, whether that's for medical appointments or whatever. We need to look at ways to, make this region more whole. And it kind of surprised us. So we didn't know what kind of support we get out there, but they were probably as sort of enthused by the whole process, in some cases, if not more, than we were at proposing some of these ideas to them. So,
Okay, so we've got two guest speakers here. We've got Mishka Balsam, the CEO of the Greater Niagara Chamber, and Hugo Cheshire, Policy and Government Relations Manager. I know you've been making the circuit, so welcome to Niagara Falls.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Diodati, Council, staff, and members from the public. With me tonight is Hugo Cheshire. He's our Government Affairs and Policy Manager, and my name is Mishka Balsam, and I'm the CEO of the GNCC. Like the comments I heard today, and I could save you 4 minutes if it's a no-brainer, but just in case it isn't, I am going to take up a few minutes of your time. The issue before you tonight is whether to endorse the principle of a consolidated transit system and to commit to working with Welland, St. Catharines, and the region of Niagara towards this. Specifics will be worked out in that process with your directions to the staff. The principle of a consolidated transit system would support what the business community, students, and I would like to point out that we have a few people here in the audience from the Brock University Student Union who are with us today, poverty reduction advocates, and the community as a whole is asking you to do. The plan suggested by Dylan is not a binding one at this point. We would ask that you vote to move forward, not to kill it or delay this plan before you, even because we need to know all the details of it. So through the business lens, and a few comments tonight were already made on this one, if a household can save on their cost of living, they will have a greater consumer purchasing power. Simply put, they have higher disposable income, which will result in more spending and will improve our economy. We're in a community here that is high on accommodation and attractions and trying to attract a lot of employees to this market. Moving people around more efficiently means a larger labor pool. Job seekers, interns, students can find careers and positions in their field. And if you would have been, or some of you might have been at some of the other presentations, it was really interesting to hear how some of the students said they don't even have a chance at a career here in Niagara Falls just because they couldn't make it here. And business's productivity benefits from more reliable, motivated, and interested employees. And our connectivity beyond Niagara's borders is crucial to our economy as well. The success of GO Train will depend upon the efficiency of the feeder services that bring people to and from the GO Train stations. But it will cost money. In the world, there is not a single transit system, and that includes looking at Hong Kong's mass transit railway. It's 3 times the population of Toronto. In a size, the city of Guelph, and 90% of the workforce actually uses public transit to get to work. They don't make money, so it costs us money. We took a look and a glance at it. Currently, Niagara Falls residents pay per capita approximately $192.74 on transit every year. The additional 2018 operating costs of this proposal amount to $1,300 for the city, which would cost each resident an additional 1.6 cents per year. The one-time cost for the consolidated model shared amongst the residents of the 3 cities would amount to $2.65 per resident. We feel at the GNCC that this is a small price to pay for the benefits the system would bring. But there are the capital costs. They're projected between $9 to $16 million over 7 years. Some of those costs would happen regardless of consolidation. But please be aware that if we consolidate, we actually for the first time have a chance to apply for federal infrastructure funding. And we currently have a government on a provincial and federal level that are actually looking at expansion and investment in infrastructure. This would really be critical to us. The second important part is that we can't look at one issue in isolation. In 2012, the Niagara Community Observatory out of Brock University estimated poverty costs Niagara $1.38 billion per year, including social transfers, private costs, and social costs. 4 years later, we estimate that this cost has actually only risen. A major part of the cost of poverty stems from the lack of access to jobs and services. Investment in public transit will reduce the cost of poverty as Niagara residents are able to find work, move out of social housing, and access medical services. This means not only a reduction in social funding from taxation, but also a decrease in needed private contributions, social costs, and helping to grow the local economy. Surveys have repeatedly found that taxpayers are willing to subsidize public transit and to pay more for a better system. Our own survey after our 2015 Niagara Economic Summit, attended by over 350 people in Niagara, found that the business and community leaders who attended prioritized consolidated public transit with a single fare box as the most important political and economic issue for Niagara. A year later, last year in 2016 survey, the survey showed that public transit was rated as one of the most important items affecting business, and nearly half of the respondents said that public transit needed to receive more funding. On behalf of Niagara's business community, we ask you to endorse the principle of a consolidated transit system and commit to working with Welland, St. Catharines, and the region of Niagara. Thank you very much, and we're open to any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Paulson? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know too. I see that we've got representatives in the gallery here from BUSU, Brock University Student Union. I see from our Mayor's Disability Committee we've got Paisley Jandry here as well. So I know there's a number of people here in support as well. So if there's Councilor Morocco.
And just for the record, just also want to make sure that Dan Patterson, President of Niagara College, has sent in a letter endorsing this.
Yeah, thank you for that too. Niagara College, obviously, and Brock both wholeheartedly support this. So thank you for that. So now we'll go to Councillor Thompson. You wanted to make the motion. We're ready for that. Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Morocco. If there's no further discussions, we'll call the vote. All those in, I'm sorry, Councillor Crater. Yep.
Just a couple. I thought initially when you were asking us, I thought we were going to have our discussion at the end, so I was going to wait until the public speak, and that's the only reason I'm speaking now. So I just want to say a couple short things. One is, had the opportunity to go to St. Catharines and listen to their council and to the public input about the proposed transit system. And it was really exciting, I have to say that. I mean, it was extremely exciting because of the number of youth that were up there from Brock University or Niagara College, and we have them here as well. One of the things I wanted to share with you is, I know during my term of office as your provincial member of parliament, of course I tried to get to GO train and I pushed it forward. And that's why I'm really excited about what's happening right now, because one of the things that one of the pushbacks that I got up there, every time I talked about the GO train, they would say to me, the minister, the premier's office would say, can you share with me the regional transportation system that you have in place? So when people get off the GO train, they can go to Welland, they can go to Niagara Falls, they can go anywhere in the region, similar to what Toronto has when you get off at the Union Station. They have a transportation system. And my answer was, we don't have it, but it's coming. And I think that might have been a bit of a deterrent when we were pushing to try to get a GO train, because we don't have a transportation system. And this is really exciting because we're moving forward with it. And certainly I'm going to support it. I think this is great. And I do want to commend a couple things. One is how far you've gone with it in such a short time, because it's a very complex issue. And in St. Catharines, when I listened, the excitement just around that council table and with the mayor about this, and some of my colleagues in Welland, I talked to a couple of councillors up there, and they're excited about it too. So it's nice to see that all three of the major municipalities are working together on this. And I've talked to some of the smaller municipalities, some of the members who are councillors out there, and as you said, Mr. CEO, they're excited about the opportunity. So maybe, in a strange way, this might be the catalyst that might hold the region together as one unified structure, as opposed to 12 different municipalities sort of going in 12 different ways on occasions. So I'm going to certainly support this. I think this is great. I think it's a great opportunity. Now, just I think for the public that are watching, what we're doing is we support this. We're just supporting it, that it moves forward. We're not committing any financial resources to it. Everything has to come back to all of us, on municipalities, and we have to make a decision on what we do as a CAO SID. That's the next step. But in order to keep it moving, we need to vote tonight so that we're supporting it, and I'm certainly going to do that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grader, Councilor Grader. And yes, obviously, I think it's reasonable to expect that you shouldn't. I don't think it's reasonable that you should take hours to get across the region, take hours to get to the hospital, take hours to get to university or Niagara College, or to get to work. It's not reasonable for those that don't have vehicles or can't drive, or whatever the case may be. So I think there's an awful lot of support around the region. I can tell you all the CAOs have worked so hard, along with our transit managers and staff, to make this come together. It is very complex, and along with Gary and the Dillon Group helping us through this complicated situation. But we're happy we're here now at this point. So, without any further ado, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. So thank you. Well done, and thank you very much. So that's Welland, that's St. Catharines, Welland, and Niagara Falls, all unanimous. So now this travels on through the region. So thank you, Gary, Michigan, all the group. Thank you for being here. On to the consent agenda. What's the will of council? Okay, moved by Councillor Carriel and seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in... What's that? All those in favor? He said, was I first? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Oh, look at that. We're at the mayor's remarks. Very brief, though. It's very brief, so no time to go to the washroom. This will be quick. Obituaries. It'll be a lot briefer than the CAO's report. I promise you that much. Obituaries. William Comnack, father of Bob Comnack, who works in our Municipal Works Department. Our sympathies go to their family. I'd like to thank Councillor Campbell for representing the city at the Cub Car Rally, Scouts Canada at the Stanford Firemen's Hall. I don't know, I didn't find out how you made out with your card. How'd you make out that race, Councillor? Yes.
I should also say that Councillor Crater was there, and we had a practice run, and he was first place. Was he wearing his Cub outfit, Councillor? Yes, he did. Apparently, it was the Scout. It was apparently the original shirt.
Yeah?
In the 40s. Yeah.
But I do believe he blew on his car.
He what?
He was blowing on his car. I can't tell for sure.
He was what?
Blowing his car as
to move it along
down the hill. But he won both races.
He won. Wow, that's amazing. Check your car. There might be gum on it.
I heard that.
I was on to his little tricks. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So thank you for that. Further announcements. Congratulations to one of our employees at the city, Selene Tudini. She's the winner of the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario for her Excellence in Municipal Human Resources Award. She works in our Municipal Works Department with Mr. Holman, and she achieved the highest cumulative grade for this past year in diploma version of Employment Law and Human Resources Certificate Program for municipalities. So that's outstanding job by Selene. Also, congratulations to Alan Barillero, Oscar winner from Niagara Falls. He was recognized, was it last night? 2 nights ago, right? Sunday night. He was a Niagara Falls resident, Oscar winner for the movie Piper, Best Animated Short Film. He hails from Chippewa, a graduate of Sheridan Colleges, and great big congratulations from your hometown. For anyone looking for rain barrels, the pre-orders are taking place now for $25. It's first come, first serve. They do sell out, and you can do that online at niagarafalls.ca. A couple announcements here. We'd like to encourage everyone, if you have not already bought your tickets for the Community Outreach Dinner, which is tomorrow night at 6 p.m., generously hosted by Councillor Cario at Remington's of Niagara. So it'll be a big dinner, and that'll go for the Out of the Cold soup kitchen, the outreach community outreach group. So it'll be a great dinner, as it always is. And after that, when you're done and you're looking for some other entertainment, Comedy for Kidneys will be taking place at the Greg Fruin Theatre. And of course, I don't want to miss out on plugging the event that I'm going to be a part of as well tomorrow at lunchtime. It's the State of the City, the Niagara Falls, hosted by the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce. The event's sold out, but it will be live streamed, available on YouTube and on Cogeco Cable Channel 10. Link for the live stream can be found on our homepage at niagarafalls.ca. The luncheon takes place at the Americana tomorrow at lunchtime. There'll be updates on exciting projects for 2017. We're looking forward to updating the community. And one other announcement is that it's our solicitor's birthday today. Mr. Beeman, happy birthday. Yes, all right, you made it, another year, all right.
Is it the largest crowd ever at the games?
Apparently it is, yeah. I told, yeah. So we've got a sold out event for the State of the City tomorrow.
So is it the alternative?
No, it's actually sold out, and we've got a bit of a waiting list. I think everyone's going to come in and throw tomatoes, which will make it more exciting than ever. So our next council meeting will take place Tuesday, March the 28th, right here. So that ends the council report, which was much quicker than the CAO's report, I might add. Communications and comments of the city clerk. So we've got two. First item is the Regional Municipality of Niagara requesting support for a resolution on financial support for families of missing people. Moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Strange. All those in favor? And that's approved. And item 2, Donna Cridland requesting a change in the selection process for members of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. So you're receiving and filing, or what are we doing on that one, Councillor?
No, I move to approve the recommendation, that we support the recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Crater? Do we have any other discussion on the motion? So this is item 2. This is Wayne Fleet City Council requesting that the Conservation Authority not be chosen by the region, but it be chosen by municipal councils instead. Mr. Clerk?
Well, just a clarification. The correspondence came from a citizen, Ms. Cridland. Basically, as my memo indicates, most municipalities have either received and filed it or just received it for information. Pelham was the exception, and Pelham is agreeing with Ms. Cridland's request, which I assume also that's what Councillor Iannone is putting forward as the motion.
Okay. Any discussion to the motion? Councillor Crater?
Just a short comment. The reason I supported it, because I supported at our last council meeting, I think we made that positive suggestion that for the Niagara Parks Commission, as opposed to the provincial government up there deciding who's going to sit on the commission, why not let the municipalities make that decision and look at people who have the skill set from the community? And when I looked at this, I thought, well, that's kind of the same thing, as opposed to letting the region decide who they're going to put on it. Then let's let municipalities put forward names of people who have the skill set for sitting on the conservation authority. That's the reason I support it, because I thought it was quite similar to what I had supported a couple weeks ago for the Niagara Parks Commission.
There was a little difference. The Niagara Parks Commission motion wasn't asking City Council to make recommendations. They're asking the province, rather than appointing bureaucrats, to appoint people from Niagara. That's what that was saying. It wasn't asking the council to make the recommendations. That was a little bit different, but I appreciate that. So, the system works. The system works well. It's provincially mandated that the region appoint their members. I'm a member representing at the region, representing Niagara Falls, and I don't know. I don't see. Well, we've got one council that supported it right now, but we'll call the vote. All those in favor?
If I could, I'm sorry.
Yes, Councillor.
So right now, it's presently the province that has mandated or given the region the authority. So that would all have to change, would it not?
across the province.
If that was going to happen locally?
Yeah, Mr. Clerk.
Yeah, the legislation, the Conservation Authorities Act, gives the authority to the upper tier municipality, meaning the region, so not the lower tier. But if you read some of the background, my understanding is the way the region does it is that they go to regional council at the beginning of the term, determine if there's interest amongst the regional councilors, and it's been the politicians that have sat on that. I guess with regard to the MPCA, because it's a sort of a split between Niagara and Hamilton. In Hamilton, I believe it's a little bit different as far as, is it councillors from Hamilton that sit? It's actually citizens. So their council has delegated, the upper tier in Hamilton has delegated it to citizens. So not to put words into Ms. Cridlin's mouth, but I think her desire is that it not be the politicians that sit on the MPCA board, but that it be, experienced or qualified citizens. So I'm not sure that there would be a need for a legislative change, but just the process is how the region makes those selections.
Councillor Peter Angelo.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, is the MPCA funded by the region? And if so, are the councillors that sit on the MPCA board responsible for basically making a decision on how much to fund the MPCA?
Yes, it is funded through the region.
Okay.
Okay, so we can call that vote. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, so that fails. So motion by Councillor Carriot, second by Councillor Campbell, that we receive and file. If there's no discussion, all those in favor? Okay, and that passes. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, any additional items for council tonight? All right. So now... Okay, Mr. Clerk, we'll do ratification of the in-camera matters.
Your Worship, a couple items, and the first one, there's actually a related bylaw on the agenda as well, so the recommendation is that Council ratifies the amended collective agreement between the Corporation of the City of Niagara Falls and the Amalgamated Transit Union, AT Local 582. And the second item, which pertains to the Center Court Cafe at our McBain Community Center, that the city consent to the assignment of the lease of the snack bar at the McBain Community Center from an Ontario company, which is controlled by Aber Jafar and Hassan Amar, and that the mayor, clerk, and city solicitor be authorized to prepare, review, and execute whatever documents are required to complete the assignment described in the council report.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Campbell, second by Councillor Strange. All those in favor? Okay, and that we approve the in-camera ratification. And now, Mr. Clerk, we'll go to new business, I guess, because our deputations don't start until 6:30 and public meeting at 7, so we've got a little bit of time.
Why at 7?
Mr. Clerk?
50 times before.
Yeah, and as we did last year, what happened is the public planning meetings have been advertised for 7 o'clock for the beginning of the year. Obviously, we can switch now to 6:30 since we're through our budget process, but obviously we're not soothsayers. When we set the schedule at the end of November, we went for bi-weekly meetings up until the end of April, just in case the budget process carried on. As you know, we passed the budget last week, although we do have the water budget that has to come back in April. So, yeah, the public meetings have been advertised for 7 o'clock. We can change that now that the budget process is over, and it all comes down to what comes down the pike as far as the business at hand. We do the best as we could to hope that we schedule things accordingly.
Do we need a motion for that, for starting the public meetings earlier? No. Okay, so new business. Yes, Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Got a phone call this afternoon from citizens, taxpayer, with respect to sewer backup. Involved a lot of legal back and forth, apparently, between adjusters and the city itself. It tended to involve the whole community in Cherrywood Acres with respect to problems that are going on out there. And I was not able to talk intelligently to the individual However, I suggested that perhaps I could bring it up under new business tonight and ask that a full report come back to council with respect to the short-term and long-term implications of the problems that are going on with sewer and sewer backups.
Okay.
I'd like to make that a motion if I could.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Campbell that we have a full report on the situation. Second by Councillor Peter Angelo. Do you want to speak to that too, Councillor? And we'll get our CAO to respond.
I did, Your Worship, only because council received an email from the homeowner, actually, probably the same one that spoke to Councillor Campbell. And in the email, it says that this matter was supposed to come to council. I don't know the validity of this statement, but I'm just wondering, I guess, through you to staff, perhaps, if this was an item that was supposed to come to council.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I could just briefly, the matter that the gentleman's referring to are matters that are currently, one is actually before the courts, and the other one is going through the insurance adjustment process, if you will. So our view as staff is that those matters should not be before you in council because they're processes that we're dealing with through our insurers. Now, if there is an item in the motion that talks about general sewer problems in an area, I'm sure Mr. Holman can report back on that in a general way, but we certainly wouldn't want to be reporting back here in open council on any matters that are before the courts. And in fact, the one matter is before the courts with a third-party contractor that's involved in that claim as well. So they really, in our opinion, aren't matters that should be adjudicated on the council floor. They're matters that staff look after in terms of the court process, but I appreciate the motion in terms of if there's specific sewer problems in a general nature in a neighborhood that council needs to be aware of in terms of future capital expenditures, we'd be happy to report on that.
Yeah, Councillor.
On that issue before the courts, Your Worship, 5 years, I believe, is a long time for things to be before the courts.
Well, I might let Mr. Beam speak to that one, but it does involve a construction project. It was, as you're right, several years ago, but it's not our claim anymore. It's been a claim that's in the hands of one of the contractors.
If it's not our claim, then...
Well, the reason why, he's not going to get what he wants, so he's coming here.
Well, I think he's got good reason to get something more than what the staff have been willing to give to him up to this point. All I'm asking for is a report back so that I can talk intelligently if someone else in the community calls me up and says, look, I've got a problem, this happened.
But I think the individual in question has been litigating this case for some time. He is now at a point in the case where he basically has to either progress with it or give it up. And to date, it has not gone his way. And this is the case I'm referring to, which is in the hands of the contractor. His second claim, I think we can report back to you on that. But I think you should be prepared to find that what's being done is generating a kind of vision of there being a general problem when there is not, in fact, a general problem. So,
I can't speak to that. I can only go on the information that's provided.
Yes, and we'll
that's why I wanted to have a report back, and I think we'd bring everything.
That, but we will not be addressing his claim.
That's fine.
All right.
But I'd like to see whatever we can address come back, so that we're all on the same page.
Yes, we can do that. But I think it's very, I want to make clear that the individual claim, that we're not going to address the individual claim of this person. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The other option, too, Councillor, is if we... Pardon me? Yeah, we'll get a report back, but I'm sure in camera we could get more details than we could if it's anything specific to this case. I'm sure we could get staff report back.
I don't think that's going to solve the problem because Councillor Campbell still would not be able to address his other constituents if it was mattered in camera.
Right. Well, we've got two issues. One is the general problem, and the other one is this specific problem, right?
My sense is that Councillor Campbell wants to know about the neighborhood.
Oh, and Your Worship, I would like to also have it come back in camera. I mean, realize we can't talk about legal things outside of committee of the whole. However, I just would like to be brought up to date. There seems to be some problem there with respect to the way that that the city is perceived as dealing with its citizens that are taxpayers that pay your salary and our taxes. And I'd like to know a little more information on that.
All right, so what we'll do, Mr. Beeman, if you're fine, at our council meeting, maybe you can brief us with what you can share with us in camera.
Very well, but I guess my concern is there are a lot of these claims. And if we're going to be, one individual is seeking a higher level of service than others have. And that's, my concern is that when this sort of thing is offered, then we have to provide it to others. And that can be an enormous expense.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
We will obey council. If council wants that, that's what you get.
Mr. Mayor, and I think if it may be helpful, is I think as part of that, we need to be sharing with council what staff and the insurers and the adjusters have to go through on a general claim that we get. So council really has a full appreciation on what that is. And, I think there's sometimes a bit of a connotation or, that staff is, trying to, lack of better word, stick it to the consumer here. We're not. And there's been many cases where it's been proven that we've been negligent or that there's been a fault somehow of something we've done. Those claims have been paid. But I think the council needs to know what that process is and what we go through with every claim.
I think tremendously that would benefit myself and it'd benefit everyone else around this table. I want to support staff, but at the same time, if I don't know the process and somebody calls me, I want to be able to have an intelligent discussion with them. And unfortunately, based on the conversation today, it was intelligent, but I didn't have any information I could provide.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can, what we can do, Councilor, hopefully to satisfy the discussion here, is we'll have an in-camera report that can give you some specifics to the claim. But as part of that report, we will outline to you what that claim process and procedure is and what we go through. Then there could be a subsequent report in public that Mr. Holman can address as to what the general neighborhood backups and issues that we've had over a series of years, and that could be public information that could be presented out here in open public.
Okay. So the motion then that we're asking for is report for in camera and one for here out in the open. Right. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's supported unanimously. Thank you for that. New business. Councilor Ioannoni? Councilor Morocco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've emailed in a question twice, and I'd just like to know if I could get a response to it. It's in regards to the newspaper has been covering the MPC quite frequently, the MPCA dispute that's going on. And in one of the newspaper articles highlighted that the MPCA hired Mark Keeley as a lobbyist, and there was questions whether that had that not been done, and I guess it had been done. But somebody emailed me a question and said, we have found that the city hired Mark Keeley also between 2011 and 2013, and that we paid them in the upward of $57,000. I remember us hiring Mr. Mick Naughton, I think it was, to lobby for OLG, but I don't remember Mr. Keeley coming to us. And I'm going to ask the question as it was asked to me. Did we hire Mr. Keeley to lobby in regards to Thundering Waters and the biodiversity?
I don't know who would answer that, but Mr. CAO? Yeah, well, I don't.
Well, through Mr. Mayor, I certainly can answer that question. No, we did not engage Mr. Keeley at all with anything in regard to the Thundering Waters project. In fact, the city has never hired Mr. Keeley. Mr. Keeley was hired by the Victoria Centre BIA and the Clifton Hill BIA, and in order to assist in that process of engaging Mr. Keeley, Mr. Felicetti, basically, because it was a BIA initiative, Mr. Felicetti helped coordinate that for them. The Victoria Centre BIA and the Clifton Hill BIA paid 100% of the cost of Mr. Keeley's services, and it was related to lobbying efforts around the keeping of the Casino Niagara initiative at the time when that whole issue was going on. So that's how Mr. Keeley's services were engaged. It was through the BIA executives of both of those agents, or both those BIAs, coming to us and saying, could we help? We actually, in fact, did participate staff-wise with Mr. Filicetti and the mayor. Actually, we made trips to Toronto. We had a publication that was done by Mr. Keeley at the time, and ultimately was successful because Casino Niagara ultimately remained open longer. So that's where his services were engaged, but we have not had any other relationship with Mr. Keeley, and certainly Mr. Keeley was not hired on our behalf in relationship to anything that happens or is happening at the Thundering Waters development.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I got an email, so I did my own research, and I'll be happy to send the rest of council the lobby registry where Mr. Keeley registers and says that he was employed by the City of Niagara Falls. Hence my asking you that question. I took a screenshot of it, just so you know, I didn't just ask that. But that would have been easily answered in an email, and I wouldn't have had to raise it here. I had sent the email in twice.
Mr. Mayor, that every lobbyist, as is required by the province, has to register a group as a, and that's been on that, our name's been on that register for 7 or 8 years. It's because the BIAs came to us. They exist because of us, and Mr. Keeley put the name of the registry on that it was us, only that they needed a name there to put on the registry because they're legally required to do so. I can tell you that other than that, all of the financial things were paid for directly by the BIAs in an effort to keep Casino Niagara.
Councillor?
Thank you. Then I don't understand how, when I went back and through our own Laserfiche, I found in the accounts that the checks made to Mr. Keeley were from the city. That's how I knew the number.
That's because the BIAs submit money to us, and a check was cut from us to Mr. Keeley. And that was an arrangement that was made through the BIAs. Because there was 2 BIAs involved, the money flowed into the city. City Treasury then paid the bill on behalf of those 2 BIAs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morocco? Councillor Morocco?
Sure. Still under new business. 2 things I'd like to actually bring forward. I've had a request by the downtown BIA to come on the board. So I have agreed, and I would just like to bring that forward to have the approval of council for me to sit on the downtown BIA.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pietrangelo, that Councillor Morocco be appointed to the downtown BIA. Is there any discussion to that? All those in favor? Okay, that's approved.
Thank you very much. Second thing that I'd like to bring forward is that we had a meeting with, with Lori Tabera and Michelle Began from the for Cancer Climb, for the Stair Climb for Children's Cancer. They're celebrating their 25th year. And they're asking how we could possibly help through marketing, through tourism, through websites, through anything else. And I know that some great comments came back and talked about getting the schools involved. And it was one of the recommendations that you had brought forward in the meeting. And I'd like to bring that forward now and put that challenge out, because they are really having a challenge to get more and more local people, and especially engage young people. We are talking about children's cancer. So I think I'd like to bring that forward to see if we can get the support, and maybe offer the school that would be the winning school to raise the most money or pledges, whatever, that they would win free skating, as you suggested. So I just wanted to bring that forward to see that if we can maybe put that out there to some of the schools to get them engaged.
And the museum's the other thing we can offer to them too, right? Free admission to our museum as a
right. And maybe if they need to get there, free transportation on our buses.
Yeah, free transit passes. Right, Mr.
So I just wanted to put that out there. So if we could actually help them, and maybe if it could be promoted too on the website, and maybe through the tourism organizations, Niagara Falls, any other tourist businesses that can actually actually help to promote them, that would be greatly appreciated. I think they're also going to be working with some of the hotels to see if they can put some package together to actually advertise and entice people to come to Niagara and participate in the stair climb and look at discounted rooms and maybe some meals and vouchers or something like that. So I think it's a great opportunity to support this organization. So I would just ask that if we could have that support to help them at any rate.
And the date of that again, Councillor?
Sorry? The date?
The cancer...
It's April 22nd. And of course, it's going to be at the Skyline.
Okay.
And actually, the information is www.cancer.ca/stair climb Niagara, and the hashtag is Climb4Kids. So if you want to find more information, registration, that's where to go. So.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Councillor Morocco that the Skylon Climb for Childhood Cancer, it's their 25th anniversary this year, that the city get on board to help promote the event. Unfortunately, attendance has come down over the last couple of years. Last year we had a new record. Gord Singleton's time for climbing to the top was broken last year by a gentleman from Florida who's going to come back this year for the 25th anniversary. We're trying to really help them ramp this event up. And I know, Councillor Strange, this is a charity that's near and dear to your heart as well. So we're going to do all that we can to help promote. So we're looking for a motion to bring the city on board to help promote it through our website, to offer incentives for the school competition, to offer free skating, potentially admission to our Niagara Falls History Museum, and if need be, access to our transit for the winning school. That'll raise the most pledges for it. Okay, and that's seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. Is there any discussion to this motion? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. A couple of months ago, I had asked staff to investigate whether or not the region has started the process in terms of making the 406 fully functional. And I haven't heard back yet on whether or not they've actually started the process. So I was just wondering if I could ask through you whether there was any update on that issue.
When you say fully functional?
Fully functional, meaning that if you're heading north on the Queen Elizabeth Way right now, you can't access the 406, right? And as well, if you're, as well, if you're on the, am I saying 403? The 405. 405. 405.
Well, going
saying
toward
406, yeah.
the Lewiston Bridge.
405, right.
Yes.
So if you're on the 405 and you're heading westbound, you also can't access the Queen Elizabeth Way southway, going south, right? So if you're on the Queen Elizabeth Way heading north, so
like Toronto bound.
Exactly. Yeah, you cannot access the 405 and head to the Queenston-Lewiston Bridge. And sorry, I get the 6 and the 5 mixed up all the time. But I think what happens is all of the industrial, vehicles that are along Stanley Avenue, instead of being able to use the 405 as an outlet and being able to access the Queen Elizabeth Way, they in essence have to go through the city. And I know that the region has some long-term plans in terms of Mewburn Road or Concession 6 at that point, and creating access to the 405 from Concession 6. I think it would be a much better plan, really, if they just simply made the 405 fully functioning. That would get a lot of the industrial vehicles off of our city roads and put them on the highways where they should be. So.
Mr. Holman, do we have any updates on or Mr. Dren, whoever knows about the 405?
I don't have the specifics on the 405. I know that it was an area that they were going to study, but I can tell you that there is a public information center Thursday night at the Gale Center. There's a presentation starting at 6:30, and there's an open house from 6 till about 8 o'clock. So if you need additional information, or we can certainly bring the issue back up on behalf of council and ask for a more specific timeline for the completion of that proposal.
Your Worship, I think the last time that we discussed it, staff had said to me that the region might be investigating making it fully functioning. And that's why I had said at the time, could we actually find out whether or not the region has started the process of making it fully functioning? And if they haven't, then I'd like to put a motion on the council floor that we endorse the concept of the 405 becoming fully functioning. And that's really where I think we should be headed with this. I know that the region has plans, again, to improve the outlet at Concession 6 and to make that accessible to the 405. But I really don't believe that that's going to solve our problems in terms of getting the industrial vehicles off of our city streets. So, I mean, if they haven't started the process, I'd be happy to put the motion forward. My question was only, have they started the process yet?
So there's a public meeting on Thursday. It's in your packages as well. So hopefully we can all attend, and we'll make that motion that the City of Niagara Falls supports the, how would we word this?
Well, I think, to be quite honest, it's just simply that the 405 be fully functioning before any other improvements are made. I don't necessarily see access, or I guess any type of heavy vehicles going up and down Mewburn or Concession 6. I don't see that, Your Worship. I think that the grade there is too steep. I think that there's too many improvements that would have to be made to the escarpment. I know the region's plan is to get the trucks from Glendale and not have them access the Queen Elizabeth Way at Glendale, but to drive down York Road and then to access the 405 from Concession 6. Again, I think if we ever ended up with a plan where we could access the 405 no matter what direction we were going, it would be a much better plan than the alternative that's being proposed.
So the motion is that we're going to support the 405 being fully functional.
Fully functional.
Okay,
Yep. Sounds
good. We've got a motion by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Campbell. Is there any other discussion to the 405? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimously supported.
Thanks, Your Worship. And my second issue was what I said to Council last week. 2 meetings ago, a motion had went on the Council floor that dealt with studying, I guess, Station 7, or the new fire hall that was proposed, and also studying the staffing issue that would surround Station 7. And at our last Council meeting, what I said to Council was that I was hoping to have a discussion about separating the two, and I understand that that would come by way of a motion of reconsideration. So if that's the case, then I'd be happy to make the motion, and if the motion is supported, then we can have the discussion. So I'll make the motion to reconsider the motion that was passed 2 meetings ago.
Second, recorded vote.
Okay, Councillor Morocco?
I want to second that, and I'm seconding that because I didn't have an opportunity. I wasn't here at that meeting, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to have a discussion about Station 7.
Okay. So it's going to be a recorded vote?
Okay, and just to remind council what the motion was at that time was ordered on the motion of Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Campbell, that an external third party be engaged to review the timing for a new fire station, looking at staffing levels and response times in comparison with comparable municipalities. So the reconsideration would allow for debate to happen again. It doesn't necessarily negate that motion. So the reconsideration would just be to allow for discussion on this again. Also, I know some have asked me, our procedural bylaw does not require 2/3 for a reconsideration. It's a simple majority. So
it doesn't, unless it's the same meeting.
No, not even the same meeting. What our procedural bylaw says about the same meeting is that the mover and seconder have to be in the majority. Okay, so at a subsequent meeting, anybody can make the motion.
We have a question, Councillor Strange.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. If we do separate these two, and so there'll just be a study on the staffing then of it?
You're jumping ahead here.
Yeah. So we first, unless a motion for reconsideration passes, we can't even have the discussion yet. So that's just to see if we can open it up for a discussion.
Okay, so Councillor Campbell?
No.
Councillor Crater?
Yes.
Councillor Iannoni?
Yes.
Councillor Carrio?
No.
Councillor Morocco?
Yes.
Councillor Pietrangelo?
Aye.
Councillor Strange?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Mayor Diodati?
No.
Okay, it's defeated.
other new business? Okay, we are just about ready to start. We can bring in our first deputation. Yeah, would you have new business? Business quick. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, there was, sorry, as you're coming in. As Myers coming in. There was a tragedy last week, and I think everyone knows about it. A young lady, Jessica Edwards, was in a car accident, and she passed away, and 4 other residents were hit on Mountain and Taylor.
That area.
Yeah, that's why as you brought him in, it was like, okay.
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, okay.
A lot bigger. Anyway, I went to Meyer. I'm okay. Safe territory.
Are you calling the head coach? The coach is down here. Join me. Davey, you want to join me? That won't be enough.
Read the story. You can choose the players. And
You will do actually. Bring these. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on. As we're bringing these awards forward, I'll read you a story. And once again, we welcome Ian Meyer to the council chambers. Our CAO, don't go anywhere, Mr. CAO. He's a Stanford grad back in the day, and it always hurts him when he sees the purple colors in the chamber. But that's okay. So I'd like to welcome the Ian Meyer team here, and I'm going to read a little bit about it. It's a very special team that we have here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to first read a little bit of a bio of what happened, and I'm going to ask the head coach to introduce the rest of the coaches, all the players, and then we've got these little keepsake mementos that you can take with you. And I know it's not exactly huge, but we do this on purpose. And why do we do that, Councilor Strange? So that they're so tiny, they'll sit at the front of all your trophies and awards. So
I thought it said Trump at first.
The Trump, yeah. No, it says Triumph, not Trump. Yeah. So let me read about the A. Meyer Senior Boys Football Team 2016 OFSA champs. That's Ontario champs. Mr. CEO, that's Ontario. This past November, at the Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton, the A. Meyer Marauders Senior Boys Football Team defeated Cambridge's Jacob Hespler. And this one I especially like because my brother's kids went to Jacob Hespler up in Cambridge. They beat Jacob Hespler, the Hawks, 50-7. To win the Central Bowl and capture their 3rd OFSA championship. Ranked number 2 in the country, the Meyer team showed why they made their 3rd consecutive OFSA Bowl game. This was their 3rd straight victory in an Ontario Federation of School Athletic Association Bowl game and a perfect 8-0 record, outscoring their opponents 335-50. The Marauders racked up 328 passing yards, while their opponents had 66. And we're very, very proud of our A. Meyer Marauders representing the city so well and making us all so very proud. So I'll give a big hand to our champs. So I'm now going to ask our head coach, Dave Buchanan, if he would please maybe introduce your coaching staff maybe give us a little bit of and then we'll introduce the players and maybe give us a little bit of a history. And then as he calls you up one at a time, I'll present you with one of these. If someone wants to do a picture, we can do that, and then we'll do a group shot. That sound good? Nice. And that's the way in over there, by the way. So, Mr. Buchanan, it's all yours.
You want me to introduce coaches?
Yeah, when you say we'll start with your coaches, sure.
Angeles. Hold on.
We'll do one at a time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Bobby Ford. Rob Colosimo. Dave Jaradat.
Okay.
We're well being fasting.
Yeah, I know.
Glenn Temlock. Ralph Schultz. Nico Moreno. And Tony Lisa.
Players-wise? Sure.
Okay, I'm just going to go through the list here. So Tyler Hildebrand.
Okay, you feel that? It's alphabetical, so you can kind of figure out who's coming next. No, they're not. If you read them
By numbers.
Oh, by numbers. Okay.
Jackson Mapes. Oh, Jackson.
Oh, do you want to get the shot? Or who are you going to take? Somebody take a picture? No, come on up here. Come on.
Sanders, D'Angelo. Jake's a hand, Andrews. Adams, Abu or Dad. Connor Madison. Josh Lisi. Lucas Mazzone. Dallas Bone. Sean DeGoss. Ethan Ward. Tyler Schultz.
Don't be shy, guys.
Troy Glossmo. Matthew Diltz. Christian Curiata. Morgan Kelly. Last but not least, the future, Zach Ayash.
Okay, so now, so Coach, I can't see you. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Do you want me to give it a shot? Sure. Well, as soon as it's done. What's that? Maybe the coaches should come up the front. We can't see you guys.
Players will be on the real meeting. They're probably down.
Plug popping pizza. So we can ask our coach maybe give us a synopsis. Okay. Well, he's going to talk first. He's going to talk. So we'll ask Coach Buchanan maybe give a little bit of an overview of the season they had. It was spectacular. The whole city was excited and on fire. I know the school, the energy in the school that week was amazing. I was there for their open house. And maybe, Coach, I know you got an amazing coaching staff, unbelievable team, and maybe you want to just share with us how you did it, what your plans are for next year.
Yeah. Win. Well, to start off, yes, you said about the coaching staff. So we have between our junior and senior program, we have 18 coaches on staff. So which is unique. As far as the season, we started our season. We got the opportunity to travel to 2 games away. So we got hosted by the Waterloo Warriors, and we played a top-ranked team there. Then we went to Guelph and played the top-ranked team there. So that was before our season even started. So we had opportunity to have a lot of these guys get recruited that way. When we started our season, we didn't really know what to think with the season and some of the changes that happened. But the one great thing that happened out of that is all of our kids got to play. So that was a phenomenal opportunity. And then finally got to the time when we had to play the Catholic rep. Had a phenomenal game too with Dennis Morris, which we are always tough. Got through that game with a last-minute touchdown and made our way to the Officer Bowl. And when you're playing in an Officer Bowl, you just don't know what to think because you haven't played these teams. But this is the number 10 ranked team in Canada, so it was supposed to be a pretty formidable game. I think these guys played the best game that I actually ever seen them play, so it was a perfect timing to play the best game they ever played. And little story, this weekend, one of the coaches that we have that's not here was in Waterloo, and they were with the Jacob Hesway staff, and they said, we have never experienced anything like that. You guys were above and beyond what we could have ever expected, and you were on another level. So hats off to these guys. They ended up number 2 ranked team in Canada. Wish we would have had an opportunity to play number 1 because we watched them play and we definitely felt we had a team that could have contended. But that being said, the boys were very happy and we were happy with how it's all come to fruition. So as far as expectations for next year, great junior group. We're already working. We're actually in the gym twice a week now with skill stuff. They lift, they do all kinds of things. So the program has taken off, and it's mainly because we have phenomenal kids, and I have a great supporting cast. So next year is, it's not rebuild, it's reload. Okay, and that's our model for next year. So, yeah, thank you.
That's good. Big hand for So, guys, don't just come on up here and we'll head across. What's that? Oh, yeah, hold on. We got one more.
Sorry, just one more thing, guys. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the reason the Meyer Marauders have rebuilt and gotten to this stat is because of this gentleman right here. He won the Doug Austin Award this year in the city of Niagara Falls, which was fantastic. And you know what? He doesn't get it. He think he gets the recognition, but I'm telling you right now, we wouldn't be where we are as a coaching staff, as a team, or anything else if it wasn't for Dave Buchanan's brainchild.
And I want to say, I'm so glad they washed the uniforms. That's all I want to say. There's a couple of guys, maybe we can crouch, because we can't see company in the back. I wanted to come out here, you guys, so we can see everybody. Yeah. We're going to do a quick shot here. Our staff are going to take it. So if you listen, all right, there we go. And if we can't see it, we can come to the front.
Yeah, my knees are still good. They're still good. I'm still young. All right, good? I don't know how this is going to work. Here we go. Who are we looking at?
Me.
We're looking at Joyce.
No, me. Okay.
All right. We're not looking to Mr. Crater.
Sorry, Jim. And then we got one right here, Dale. Parents. Just to the right here, Dale.
Sorry.
Hey, one of you want a box for me?
Are you in the Pro Glove?
Look at the clock now. You guys look toward the clock.
All right.
So guys, on behalf of the city of Niagara Falls, thank you for making us proud. If I could just... Oh, and Mike Strange, I grew up with Dave, so I'm very, very proud of what you've done to this team, and turn this team around. Years ago, they couldn't even win one game, then you come and turn this whole team around, and the last 2 years, as well as baseball, doing a great job. And I know the parents are so proud. It's time-consuming, I'm sure, for the parents as well to become coaches as well. So I think the most important thing is that they're getting, a lot of these guys are getting an education through sports scholarships. And I don't know if I heard right how many, 8
so far.
So yeah, unbelievable. 8 scholarships from Myers football team are going on to university. So it's just awesome. So it's great. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Take them on. Later we got a box right there. Do you have a box over there, please? Okay, yeah. If you, Dale will help you over here. She'll find something. Thanks, guys. That's all right. I went to my shoot, guys. Yeah, we had it right Kelly too. Here, you being son?
Thank you.
No, I'm. Thank you. Thanks again. I'll take care. Next one. Okay. Thanks very much. Sorry about that, Kevin.
We'll see you in the Super
Okay, we're going to continue on with new business. We've got, now that we've got a little bit, it's a little quieter, and I did want to make an announcement, another obituary sad announcement. I did get word that Henry Mueller passed away today. Longtime business person in our community, and he did fall sick today, and he did succumb and pass away this afternoon. So our condolences to the Mueller family as well. Councillor Strange.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as I was talking, coincidentally, the Meyer students come in, and this young lady went to Meyer a few years ago. Jessica Edwards last week, her and 4 other residents from Niagara were hit by a car on Mountain Road and Taylor. 2 are in serious but stable condition. 2 were released from hospital, and unfortunately, one, Jessica Edwards, passed away in her early 20s. And I would love to just send our condolences from the City of Niagara Falls City Council to their family.
Okay, motion by Councillor Strange, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo, that we send our condolences along. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you for that. Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I should have got up and asked it before, but when can we expect to see that study? Because I think most of us are anxious to get on with it. It's not like we're trying to stall it. When will we see the study with the information that we'd like to see to move forward with whatever we're going to do with the fire station?
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor, I don't really have a specific time frame because we haven't actually, as we speak, got the consultant engaged yet. But I had indicated before it's going to be several months. But that would be my best guess. Once we get the consultant engaged, we have a better timeline. We can certainly report back.
Do we have a consultant?
No, HR. Mr. Dark's out right now. We're getting consultants, finding consultants that have done this kind of work before, and he's going to be going through that review process. But we haven't.
So we report back to us when we hire it and when we can have
yes.
it.
Okay. How much is going to be?
Yeah, how much it will be.
Absolutely.
It's going to be more than 53,000.
Any other new bit? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah. With some of the discussions we've been having in the last few weeks, I've been working on this for years. In fact, we got rid of one railroad, and there's still another one that is causing huge problems. Just in the last couple of years, we've had more problems with the CN line than any other one. We had a committee set up. Red Issapan was a resource which was unbelievable, and we haven't had a meeting for a year or so. And it's even more important, even when you talk about the location of the fire hall. The main reason is the rail line going through there that causes problems for fire, police, ambulance, whatever. And, you know, there is a solution to this if we really worked on it. If we had to put an overpass on Morrison Street, it was going to cost us $15 million like 5 or 6, 8 years ago.
That's if we keep the region out of it.
Pardon me?
That's if we keep the region out of it.
Yeah. Who's got the floor here? Anyway, this is, in my opinion, something that can be resolved. I think the cost to this municipality to rectify what's already there is massive. And I think that we have to get the federal government on side to pressure this, because you can run a line directly over to Fort Erie from Hamilton and keep it out of the city completely. And if we had to put in a few $1 million ourselves to tie that line in or to help or support it, what a tremendous relief for residents, relief for all of the emergency services, and yet we've been sitting on it and nothing is happening. I would really like to have a report back to give us an update, to get the committee moving on this, and see if we can accomplish that objective, because that would make a huge difference with respect to so many different areas, residential, traffic, emergency people. So I'm disappointed that we haven't really pursued this as vigorously as we could. We did it once before, and I'm not afraid to stand up here and vote for some money to try to encourage them to do that, because the savings is going to be immense. And
I'm going to... Sorry, and I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, last year, because this is discussions with CN, and the reason that we weren't as engaged is because we were engaged with CN for the GO train, because we're using CN tracks for the GO train to come to Niagara Falls. So we wanted to make sure first, we were in a good place with them here before we started to go battle on the second piece. Now, I will tell you, because of the meetings that we had with our train relocation committee, that we were working to engage some of the a top consultant to help us through exactly what you're saying. So I'd ask the CAO if you could maybe give us an update on where we're at.
Well, certainly, sir. And the Mayor's absolutely right. We have been delayed in doing this, and it was just trying to set the priorities and working through with CN. I can tell you that one of the gentlemen that I've been talking to and we've engaged to help us out is Mr. Gary McNeil, who was here earlier tonight, past President GO. He has very good contacts at CN. He has been working on this project. He is currently away. He's going to be back in April. We just spoke out in the hall, and when he gets back, we're going to get back on this, because some of the Newburn Bridge and the GO file is kind of now pushed along. We can concentrate again on getting the committee back. So we'll refocus that starting in April.
Anyway, I would make a motion that we have a report back just to give us an update, and we pursue this as vigorously as we can, because, what an impact it would even have in the discussion on the fire hall locations. It's something that is really important to this community, and it can be done. Red Issapan had drawings of actually, they don't stop anywhere in the city of Niagara Falls. They come through and go out, and they end up in Fort Erie. So let's really pursue. I make a motion that we get the committee reactivated, and we keep the council informed, and we pursue this as vigorously as possible.
That's great. Motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Campbell, that we engage and get a report back on where we're at with this, and also an update on engaging of Gary McNeil to help us through this process, because he's probably one of the, if not the top rail personnel of Canada that can help us through this. He's pretty amazing. So we'll call, if there's no discussion, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Okay. Councillor Campbell. Any other new business? Nope. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and we're going to resume at 7 o'clock.
We're going to go back in the
Are we ready, Mr. Cameraman? All right, good. All right, our recess is now completed. We're going to continue on with our council meeting in the planning portion of the agenda. I would now call on our clerk to please introduce the next item on the agenda.
Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened for a draft plan of subdivision and proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw. This is related to Warren Woods Estates Phase 5, which is located east side of Garner Road, north of Brown Road. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, January 27th, 2017, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber. I'm sure Mr. Hurlovich will mention it, but in your handouts tonight is a revised set of conditions related to this application. So the conditions in your handouts would be the ones that we would be suggesting that you approve.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll now ask our Director of Planning, Mr. Hurlovich, to explain the purpose and reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Worship. This application is for a plan of subdivision and a rezoning for 21.5 hectares of land on the west side, or east side rather, of Garner Road. And in fact, it's the Phase 5 of the Warren Woods plans of subdivision, which have been developing behind Niagara Square. So the lands in question are 21.5 hectares. They also include the east-west former hydro transmission corridor. That's this series of blocks of land running east-west through the area. And so to the east are single-family houses. There's provincially significant wetlands to the north, and to the south there are detached dwellings and more wetlands to the west, and some vacant industrial lands to the southwest, which are also owned by the developer. The proposed plan of subdivision is on the screen, and again, the former Ontario Hydro 1 transmission corridor runs through the middle of the property. This is going to form a brand new boulevard, which will connect then phases 1 and 2 of Warren Woods, phase 3 of Warren Woods subdivision, and phase 5. So this will be a brand new boulevard connecting all of this subdivision and basically concluding the development of this area. The application is for rezoning, as I said. It would be an R1F with special provisions. I'll review those in a few minutes, as well as an R3, which is our street townhouses. So there are blocks for about 51 street townhouses. There's also a block of commercial land, some parkland, and a stormwater management pond as well. The applicant is proposing 290 lots for single-family houses, 56 on-street townhouses. I mentioned the park, linear trails, stormwater management. The developer has also applied to amend the zoning for the environmental protection areas, the provincially significant wetlands to the north and to the east rather, and to the south in these lands. We held a neighborhood meeting in January. The residents who attended were largely concerned that the trees would be protected, since those are provincially significant wetlands. They will be. This application applies with the provincial policy statements and growth plans. The density is a little lower than we hope to achieve, but when we average it over the entire Garner South secondary plan area, it will meet the density of 54 people and jobs per hectare. The Garner South secondary plan does identify the lands for low density and medium density residential, and that is what is being proposed, as well as environmental protection for a small portion of the lands. The lots comply with the density of the official plan. There are some lots that are reverse lot frontage, but they're acceptable because it reduces the number of street accesses onto Garner Road. And the townhouse blocks also comply with the densities. The secondary plan requires a park, and 5% of the land will be dedicated for park purposes. There is a 2-kilometer arc from SciTech, and so within that area, they have allowed for their neighborhood commercial, industrial, and employment uses, as well as parkland and stormwater. But because it is within that area, daycare, clinics, and residential uses are prohibited from inside of that arc. The zoning bylaw, I mentioned the R1F provisions. So they're seeking a reduction in the lot area, lot frontage, the minimum side yard setbacks, minimum rear yards, and so on. All of these standards are exactly the same standards that we have in the Warren Woods phases 1 through 4. So it's basically more of the same type of housing that you've seen developed by Empire Homes. They're also seeking special provisions for the R3, the on-street townhouses. Again, these provisions are exactly the same as the on-street townhouses that were established in Phase 1 of the Warren Woods plan of subdivision. So therefore, the requests can be supported because they follow the same form. The lot coverage is addressed through building setbacks, and the setbacks maintain minimum separation distance between the dwellings and streets. The PSW lands, the provincially significant wetlands, will be zoned environmental protection. Although they're outside of the plan of subdivision, the developer is actually recognizing them through zoning, and that will implement the official plan policies. There's the subdivision design. I mentioned the new east-west road, which will connect the various phases of this development. The lands of the former hydro corridor were transferred to the city, and they can only be used for public purposes. So the portion of that corridor which is not used for the road will form part of the recreational trail system through these subdivisions. As well, Hydro 1 retains the rights for future transmission lines over these lands. There are 17 lots that back onto Garner Road. While we generally discourage reverse lot frontages, these were acceptable because we're basically avoiding a number of traffic conflicts that would have resulted otherwise. I mentioned already the SciTech lands. Those lands are provide for the commercial block, industrial uses, and the stormwater pond. The parkland is slightly larger than the 5%, so that can be reduced. The report, and the city clerk alluded to this, expressed that there were still some concerns being worked out by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Those have now been resolved, and in your handouts tonight is a revised plan of subdivision that slightly reduces the size of the block for the stormwater pond, which was the primary concern. As well, it changes the number of conditions that have to be satisfied by the Conservation Authority prior to registration. So we are recommending this application. We found that it does comply with the provincial and regional regulations. It complies with the city's official plan and secondary plan. The zoning reflects the form of development which will be occurring, and the wetlands will be protected. Therefore, we are recommending that the Warren Woods Estate 5 be draft approved, subject to the conditions in Appendix A of Council as outlined in your handouts. The mayor or his designate be authorized to sign the draft plan of subdivision. The draft approval be for 3 years. That the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the subdivision agreement, and that wraps it up.
Thank you, Mr. Hurlovich. Any questions of council? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Morocco.
Yes, could you explain the SciTech arc and how it impacts on this?
Let me just go forward a bit. Here. It's rather hard to read at this distance, but there is a dashed line that circles up through here. It's measured 2 kilometers from the SciTech plant where they produce the phosphine. So basically residential development and any uses which would allow a congregation of people have been prohibited. This is a negotiated agreement from the developer, Bob Odell, at the time with SciTech when this was approved. So they have put their commercial uses in here, they have employment uses, and then they have the parkland and the stormwater pond. So they've basically used that area to facilitate other uses that support the subdivision.
So here we go again. The ARC that I've been talking about for how many years now is having another negative impact on a development within the community. You know, if they want to preserve or protect something, tell them to buy the land. Why?
Well, we needed 5% parkland, so that if it wasn't there, it would be here.
Yeah,
so,
but we're still playing the same game. I know that Mr. Beeman is coming in with a report, and he sent me an email today, as a matter of fact, saying that there were some things happening and he didn't want to interfere with. But this was negotiated between Warren Woods and the group.
Correct.
Here's a group that have had government grants given to them, and they got poisonous gases out there. Why don't they put that money towards protecting what they have there so it doesn't have any chance of getting out and having negative impact on properties? This is, you know, I don't believe this. I hope we're going to have a report coming back really soon about this issue, because it's unfair.
Thank you. Councillor Morocco and then Crater.
Yes, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions there. I know that, you know, not trying to be disrespectful, but I just wanted to point out that I think we've had this arc there and has been known for years, and I think that we were not supposed to build, and they've actually come to us many times, SciTech, and asking us to support them. They've had a number of government fundings to expand, and I think that now I'm surprised to see. So what is the radius through Your Worship to our program?
Mr. Erlovich?
Yes, Your Worship, it's 2 kilometers.
So is this, the residence is still, that you're proposed here in this, is still away from the so-called arc?
The residential dwelling units are beyond the 2 kilometers from the plant at SciTech.
So the other development, which is not residential, is going to be allowed to have such as commercial?
Correct.
And SciTech's okay with that?
Yes.
Because I just wanted to note, too, then this is something that's going to have to be put in all of the agreements. Let me see. The notice clause will be included in the subdivision agreement, in any condominium agreement, in any site plan agreement, and in all agreements of purchase and sale of the subdivision lots and blocks, and any leases. So basically, they have to put this clause. SciTech Canada, Inc., SciTech, owns lands located north of the Welland River and east of Gardner Road. SciTech's lands are designated industrial and zoned for heavy industrial uses. SciTech operates commercial manufacturing and industrial facilities on its lands and may in the future expand its operation by expanding or adding or to its existing buildings or constructing new buildings and or intensifying its operations. SciTech may also erect and or construct and operate facilities for any of the uses permitted in the city's zoning bylaw. SciTech's use of its lands may generate odor and air emissions and create noise, together with other industrial effects. SciTech is a member of the Canadian Chemical Producers Association and has been verified under the Responsible Care Codes of Practice. This notice clause includes any successors and or assigns a title to SciTech. So that means they're basically wanting to cover themselves if people do buy there and they complain about the odor. Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so if those clauses would be put in the offers of purchase and sale, so that if a person was interested in buying a lot there, the realtor would advise them that there's an industrial business within 2 kilometers, and they then can decide whether or not they want to locate within 2 kilometers of that plant or not. Okay. It's a warning clause to let them know it's there.
So I just want to make clear, so that would never come back to council if residents are not happy when they move in there And they've been, this is an agreement with the builder. It's nothing to do with council. That if this goes through and they build and now they're not happy because they don't like the smell that's coming from Zytec. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be on the hook to somebody's going to say back, well, no, you're going to buy our houses back from us.
I would say that never's a long time.
Well,
I'm certain we will hear from people. We hear from them complaining about noise elsewhere in the municipality.
okay, good. So I can't support this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crater, you're not, you don't need to speak, or you do?
Question. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
That was my question.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I have never, all the time I've been here, had SciTech come here once and ask for permission regarding their arc. I think we really have to look at this because there's some subdivision developments on McLeod Road that have already been told, the potential subdivisions, that no, the arc goes there, it's going to affect your land. That's ridiculous. Yeah. If you want to buy the land, buy the land. Anyway, we have a report coming back. That's already been done, so I'll wait for that to come.
And that's what we should do, because there is this arc that they say within 2 kilometers you're not supposed to develop, but there's some good evidence that maybe that arc is overreaching. Nuclear plants don't have an arc anything like this. Other chemical plants in Ontario don't have one anything like this. So it doesn't seem, it's unprecedented. We're going to get some a report back on more details of it, but it certainly takes a whole area and it takes it out of the game. Yep. And we say it's really, if you want to take it out of the game, then buy it, right? But don't stalemate it for everybody else. Right? That's how it is with Walker Brothers. Walker Brothers buys the land, and then they do what they want with it. So, right? So, okay.
They bought all of Taylor Road, all the houses, they own them all. Everybody has the opportunity to live in them until they pass away, and then their ownership is Walker's.
And then what they do is they put it on title. Yeah. So when they sell it, if they sell a property, you can't complain about blasting or anything else. It's on title. So if there's no further questions of council, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheet will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 3419 of the Planning Act. Is there anyone here other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment? Okay, seeing none, council will now hear from the applicant or his or her representative. Welcome. Oh, sorry, those microphones, you got to twist them back up.
Is that okay?
Sure, wherever you want them, wherever you're comfortable.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Carmela Agro. I'm from Upper Canada Consultants. I'm representing the developer of the subject property, Warren Woods Phase 5. As noted, the property consists of 346 dwellings, 290 single-family dwellings, and 56 townhouse dwellings in a draft plan of subdivision. Additionally, there'll be blocks for commercial, park, the creek, the stormwater management pond, the road widening, and reserves. Applications for the draft plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw amendment were submitted to the city in December 2016. And the open house was held on January 18th, and there were a couple of residents who came out asking questions, nothing major. All the questions were pretty well answered at the open house. The property is 21.34 hectares in size approximately, with a developable density of 16.26 units per hectare and a greenfield density of 43.05 persons and jobs per hectare. The property is part of a larger phasing, which was noted earlier. This is one of the last major phases, which implements the Gardner secondary plan. The zoning bylaw amendment being applied for is shown in this map here, so it's a little more of a better context of what we've applied for here. So part 1, which is the yellow, is the development holding and light industrial to residential R1F zone, site specific. Part 2, which is the red, is the development holding to neighborhood commercial zone. Part 3, as shown as in the orange, is development holding and light industrial to residential R3, which allows for the townhouses. Part 4, which is the pink, development holding and light industrial to open space 2. Part 5, which is the blue, is light industrial to open space. And Part 6, which is the green, is development holding and light industrial to environmental protection area. So here are some of the site-specific provisions for the R1F zone that we're rezoning to, which are all in your packages. The next one here is the R3. Most of the provisions in both of these that we're rezoning to follow the previous phases. So as noted before, all the houses will pretty well be the same as the previous phases. So tonight we're just here to satisfy the requirement of the public meeting and to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Any final questions of council? Okay, seeing none, the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. Second. Okay, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo, that we move the report. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to our last planning item. Mr. Clerk, could you please introduce the item on the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened to consider a city-initiated amendment to the city zoning bylaw, and this is related to the north side of Shirk Road between Sodom Road and Niagara River Parkway. This is a proposal related to the archery club. Notice was given by first class mail on Friday, January 27, 2017, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I now ask our Director of Planning, Mr. Hurlovich, to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Yes, thank you, Worship. This application, while it talks specifically to the archery club, it is city-owned lands, and so the city is actually the applicant and leading the rezoning of this property. The property involved is approximately 25 hectares of land. That's about 62 acres of land on the north side of Shirk Road. On either side of Willoughby Drive, it's about half a kilometer from the Niagara River Parkway. The proposal then is to rezone all of these lands for recreational uses within the environmental protection area. And so when we look at what specifically is proposed, excuse me, we have 3 proposed zones. So the dark green is an environmental protection one. It's will be noted as 1038. It's in the zoning bylaws later in this council agenda. So that basically is a preservation zone. Those are provincially significant wetlands, and but it will allow for existing trails. Any new trails will require a permit from the Conservation Authority. The light green lands are environmental protection 2, which would provide again for existing recreational trails. It does allow for some bridges as well as new trails through these light green areas will require a permit from the Conservation Authority. And then the last area is the area colored in orange, and that is an area where there's some more intensive form of development. That orange block then is this parcel that's in front of you on the screen. So Shirk Road at the bottom, Willoughby Drive running north-south, and there would be a 30-car parking lot at the south end of this area. The proposal is for an archery range, so there'd be a series of targets set at different distances, and basically the archers would line up just around the parking area for those targets. This is a treed area. An environmental impact study was completed for these lands. It was determined that those trees, 56 trees, could be removed. They are asking for compensation, and they're proposing that 112 new saplings would be planted around the periphery of that archery range. As well, there are safety zones, so there's a 20-meter setback that's about 60 feet on either side of the east and west sides of the archery target range, and as well a 50-meter safety zone at the north. There's a 26-meter safety zone at the south, and as well, this was established, there's another provincially significant wetland in this area. So as well, this zone would provide for the target range, the parking, and it also provides for a storage building and possible portable washrooms on the site, which would serve the archery club members. The archery club has made a request to the city to enter into a lease. The current zoning would not allow for an archery club. It's actually a rural zone, so the archery club would not be a permitted use. So we're basically recognizing that we will zone this with respect to the environmental conditions and add those recreational uses to the property. We did have a neighborhood open house in January. There were a number of people that came out, some suggesting that the arrows might go astray and be directed to their property. However, the targets will be oriented inward to this site. As I mentioned, it's 62 acres in size, so it's basically a fairly large area, and most of that is wooded, with the exception of the area that I mentioned will be cleared. And again, there are safety buffers around that property. One of the neighbors was concerned about late night parties. The members assured that the parties or the activities cease at dusk. There will be a gate to secure that parking lot. The lands are designated environmental protection in part, environmental conservation in part, and good general agriculture in part in our official plan. So the purpose is to basically recognize the official plan through the zoning. As I said, an environmental impact study, an EIS, was done, and the study concluded that the proposal does comply with the provincial, regional, and city natural heritage policies. The zoning, I've outlined that already, so EPA 1038 would provide for the most protection of the provincially significant wetlands, allowing existing trails and new trails with the authorization of the Conservation Authority. The 1039, this is basically the lands in the official plan that are environmental conservation. So those would be recognized, again, existing trails, new trails, footbridges, and then the last area, the EPA 1040, that's the area of the parking lot and the target range. I mentioned already the trees that would be removed. Those trees have to be cut prior to April so that the bird breeding season hasn't commenced. Again, Ministry of Natural Resources has regulations so that tree cutting of a wooded area cannot occur, so they would have to wait till August otherwise. So we're recommending that Council authorize through the adoption of this report the removal of those trees by the archery club members. There would be a lease of these lands, and so that lease would have to address the removal of the trees, the construction of the parking lot, that would be their responsibility, the driveway, the placement of any buildings or structures. I mentioned storage building for their targets and so on. There would be a need to construct that portion of Willoughby Drive that leads from Shirk Road up to the driveway entrance to these lands. There's already a culvert actually into this property, which is why that driveway location was selected. They would also have to secure the property with gates. There would be signage to ensure the safe usage of the archery range, and there would be insurance needed as well as part of that lease. So we are recommending the amendment be supported as it complies with the official plan. The environmental impact study does demonstrate it will not have an adverse impact. The site-specific zoning will permit the more intensive uses at Shirk and Willoughby Drive, and the archery club will be required to enter into a lease agreement. So we are recommending that council approve the zoning bylaw that's before you tonight, and there is a copy of the bylaw attached to the council agenda. Those are highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Lovich. Councillor Morocco and Thompson.
Your Worship, through you to Mr. Herzog, I have another question. I haven't seen who's covering the cost on this, and is there a cost? So, obviously we're going to be cutting down trees, we're going to be planting. This is a city-owned property, or is this the archery club that's going to be covering the cost of building?
Mr. Herlovich, do you want to help us out with that?
We basically brought the zoning forward. Those were our costs. It's our land, but basically the lease agreement would be turning all of that over to the archery club members. So that would be their responsibility.
So they'll build the parking lot?
That's the requirement.
Okay, and plant the trees?
Yes.
Okay, and who holds the key to the gate? Who's the gatekeeper?
well, I don't know, but I'm going to assume the archery club members.
So that was just some of the questions I'd like to know, because
that'll be the archery club. That'll be their land once they lease.
They'll be responsible for making sure that there's no noise or parties and making sure it gets locked. All right, Ken. Sorry.
Just whenever you're a landlord, you always have the key.
Of course.
They'll have the key and be in charge of day-to-day, Mr. Mayor, through the mayor to the councillor. But the city would have their own key just in case the city needs to get in there, like any landlord. But like any landlord, we don't want to be going in there in the rarest of circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. So I still didn't hear a dollar amount, and maybe that is.
Well, he said that's the responsibility of the archery club, right? So.
Okay. So they're going to do everything else. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Yes. This is not something new. There's been an archery club out in that general area for 35 years. So the archery club has had problems getting a place to do their archery efforts for the last several years. It's been all up in the air. Is this the same property that they were originally in? Or is this different?
It's which way do I want to go? So basically, these lands, they had their archery range was actually at the west. So they at one time had a lease with the city for all of these lands, so the same lands.
Yeah.
Their archery range was actually here. However, that property was determined at one point not to be city-owned. It was came up for tax sale. A private person bought that, and basically they lost their right to have their target range on there. So they have trails wandering through here where they set up targets and so on. So their lease expired a couple of years ago. We went to enter into a new lease agreement, realized that the archery club, because it's a private club and as opposed to a municipal run facility, so the city as a park, it could operate this as a park, but since we're leasing it to a private club, they need site-specific zoning, and so we're going through this process to set that up. The city will retain ownership, the club will operate their trails through here, and it's the exact same land, but because they lost the archery range here, they are establishing it here. This was established, you've been out to the site. This is about the clearest area. There is a driveway already through that area. Where do I want to go? So this driveway that's showing, there is already a gravel driveway. It's a bit overgrown. There is a culvert here already. So in essence, these areas is fairly well clear. So 56 trees in this whole area. It's fairly sparsely treed, but obviously arrows can't go around trees, so they do need to take those down.
Anyway, I just wanted to make sure everybody realized that this isn't something new to the area. It's been there for many, many years. But I really have to compliment everybody. Obviously, a lot of work has gone on to preserve the wetlands and the environmental areas, and also provide the archery people with the facilities that they're going to enjoy. So congratulations. I think that's a great project.
Okay. So if there's no I'm sorry, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. On page 8, it talks about the fact that some trees are going to be removed, and then I heard Mr. Hurley say that they're going to want 112 trees planted. I was wondering if there was a plan to actually have those trees planted. Is there a plan at this point in terms of planting those trees? Because if not, then I would suggest passing it over to the Park and the City Committee. Both Councillor Strange and I are a part of that, and we're always looking for new places that the group of volunteers that we have can go out and plant trees at. So if there isn't a plan already, it would be a good place to start.
Mr. Erlovich, do we have a plan, or is that with the Archery Club currently?
Well, that would be with the Archery Club. It would be their responsibility to plant the trees. We're talking really saplings as opposed to trees, but I don't know whether that relates to the size of the trees that the Park and the City Committee does, but I'm sure that any assistance that the Park and the City Committee could have and help the members of the club, I'm sure it's something can be worked out.
We can pass that as part of the motion too. You know, what a great opportunity. You got the Park and the City Committee offering to help with the trees. That'd be great. Okay, any other questions of council? Okay. Members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheet will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 3419 of the Planning Act. Council will now hear from anyone who wishes to speak to this proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this amendment? Okay, seeing none.
We ran out of money for the first archery.
Did you want to come up here, sir, to the microphone?
Sure.
You can just introduce yourself and your address.
I don't know if I want to admit. Yeah, it's Ross Sauer. I live on Shirk Road.
Okay.
They lost the property to back taxes. Who's to say that they won't lose this? And then it's all that wasted land. Why bother?
Mr. Beeman, can you help us with
the club that lost the property to back taxes? There was a out-of-town owner that owned that property who decided not to pay the taxes. The club just happened to be on that land. So it wasn't any fault of the club that happened.
Oh. Well,
So the
I guess
club
I was misinformed.
Yeah.
Well, then, can you tell me, I'm not really up on the hectares, how far east does this, where would the border line of this new park be? Would it go as far as the old power railway track? Do you know that?
Do we, Mr. Hurlovich, would you know that better?
Well, I've been out to the site, but let's see. I believe this is the transmission corridor here.
And right beside that's the old railway.
All right, and there's a city park here. That's
yes.
old. There's a house that right next door to that on Shirk Road.
That'd be mine.
That's your house. Okay, so there's a city park here, and then it's basically everything over to Willoughby Road,
right?
And then extending over to where they used to have their archery range, but as the city solicitor outlined, their archery range was actually on private property, but we didn't know it because
right on.
You know, it's kind of just a big bush area. If you know the area, which you would.
Right. And how will that up the value of our property? This new park.
I have no idea whether it will up the value or maintain the value.
Or make it bring it down.
Well, I think having someone look after some wooded land is probably
really
a benefit.
When was the last time the city cut the park?
That's.
Do we know
I
that?
have no idea.
We don't have our Parks and Culture person here today, but you talk about the park over.
The park that you're not developing for this.
Yeah, I think we know who cuts it, and I believe it's you.
Yeah. Well, you know, it only makes sense.
Rhetorical question.
So you can answer the question.
Well, that's all I had to say.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sauer.
And thanks for cutting the grass.
And thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak to this amendment? Okay, seeing none. The public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Thompson.
One more person. I'm sorry to interrupt. There was one gentleman who didn't realize that he was...
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we have one more. I'm sorry. If you want to step forward. If you can just state your name and your address, please.
Bronco McCasey. I just live across the street from that park.
And I am worried about bow and arrows, where they're going to fly. When I am working outside in the field, I'm the farmer there, okay? And I don't want to worry what's going to happen.
So where do you live, sir, in relation to this map? Alex, are you able to mark that with a red...
Well, he basically has a large house on the opposite side, quite a long driveway that goes to the back.
Okay, and which way do the arrows...
Well, for the target range, so they would be shooting in a north direction from the parking lot. So the parking lot will be here.
So the opposite, shooting away from your house. Yeah. So they're not going to be shooting toward you, they're shooting the opposite way.
You know, we don't like that. So you guys can do whatever you want.
Okay? So the public meeting is closed. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo, that we move the recommendations. If there's no further discussion... Yeah, with the addition, if you're comfortable with that, adding that the Park in the City offers to help with the planting of the trees. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous. Okay? Pardon me? With the conflict with Councillor Pietrangelo. So thank you, or Councillor Carrier, I'm sorry. So thank you for coming out, folks. It was approved. Okay, now I think we had, we've got, is there any other new business of council? Councillor Carrier?
Well, I just had one thing, Your Worship. I was talking to the clerk and had asked why we have 2 meetings in April, and it was suggested that there probably would have been one needed for budgeting, but because you did the budgeting the last meeting when Councillor Hanoi and I were not here, there's obviously no more budgets on the 11th, and I think I was wondering whether we needed 2 meetings in April, or whether we could just get away with the one on the 25th.
Yeah.
We could get away with one. As I mentioned earlier, I think we still have the water budget to do. Yeah, we went bi-weekly up to May as a contingency in case we were still in budget discussions. But if council wants to make a motion, I would suggest we cancel the first meeting in April and continue with the second one.
Okay, that is the 11th? Is that the 11th?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor Carrier, second by Councillor Strange, that we cancel the, the April 11th meeting. Is that right? Cancel the... the April 11th
come back this week if I don't have no business there.
If there's no discussion to that motion, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that passes. Is there any other new business? Councillor Thompson? Oh, hold on, we got the bylaws. Motion by Councillor, hold on a second. Mr. Clerk, do we have any other amendments or bylaws?
Yes, Your Worship, there's one handout bylaw in your package, and that's a bylaw to authorize execution of a letter of intent with the Niagara Health System.
Okay, Councillor Pietrangelo?
Yeah, motion to introduce the bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Strange, that we give the bylaws a first reading. All those in favor?
Bylaws 2017-26 to 2017-34, read a first time.
Second and third reading.
Councillor Pietrangelo, motion to give the bylaws a second and third reading, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All those in favor?
Bylaws 2017-26 to 2017-34, read a second and third time and passed.
Motion for adjournment?
Yeah, Your Worship, before we adjourn, just reading this additional bylaw that came through, I believe that I'm going to have to declare a conflict. My parents have purchased more land in the area, and I think it's close to this.
Okay.
I'm going to have to
declare conflict by
on the new
Councillor
one.
Okay. Motion for adjournment. Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Campbell. Oh, hold on, I'm sorry. Mr. Clerk.
Maybe we should, maybe you shouldn't be the mover of the bylaws, so maybe if we can just have another councillor.
Both sets?
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Carrier makes the motion.
Okay.
For the first, second, and third reading.
Okay.
Okay, we're good with that? Motion for adjournment. Councillor Carrier and Councillor Campbell. All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you. Policy. They have to fix it or